In 2003, a coming-of-age movie came out that I absolutely love. Let's talk about Secondhand Lions. Hey, what's up you guys? Imperial Nick here, and as promised, we're not going to do an action movie today. I know we've kind of actioned it up a little bit. Instead, we are choosing a coming-of-age film from 2003. It's probably one of my favorite coming-of-age movies that I have seen, and it is something that I will watch anytime it's for free to stream on Amazon Prime, Netflix, or any of those great options. If I had a DVD player, I would own it on DVD. But it is Secondhand Lions. We're going to try a different structure out with this video compared to Dread. In Dread, we kind of talked about the story, why I liked it, things like that, but it was kind of chaotic. This one I have a little bit more structure, and it's going to take some practice, so please don't mind the notebook. Where I want to start with Secondhand Lions is, it is a coming-of-age story. It's about a young boy named Walter who's dropped off by his irresponsible and terrible mother with his two uncles. Probably the best thing she ever did in like 1963 Texas. I believe it takes place in 63. And while living with his uncles, they don't really like him at first, and they kind of see him as a burden, and he doesn't really like it because they don't have TV or a telephone, and he kind of just sits there bored. Through the use of picking the correct actors for the characters, as well as a decent main plot and two really fun subplots, they were able to create a really cool coming-of-age story that I still enjoy to this day, being 31 years old. So the first thing I want to delve into is the characters and the actors that play them, and why they're so important for this story. So the characters, you have Hub and Garth. Those are the two uncles. Now, Hub is played by Robert Duvall. You might know Robert Duvall from Apocalypse Now, Open Range, Lonesome Dove. He's in a lot of movies, actually. Robert Duvall is really awesome, and the other one is Michael Caine, plays Garth. And Michael Caine was in Zulu, Inception, Children of Men. I think he was also Batman's butler in the newer Batman series. I don't really know for sure because I'm not a big fan of cape movies, as we've discussed in the past. And for Walter, the nephew that's staying with them, they picked Haley Joel Osment, who played Forrest Gump Jr. He was in AI, Artificial Intelligence, as well as The Sixth Sense. And these characters are perfect for this story. Now, Haley Joel Osment, up until this movie, kind of always played that kind of naive boy who was kind of young, kind of innocent. He always has hope in his eyes, and literally, he always has hope in his eyes. Look at AI, Artificial Intelligence. We're going to do a video on that because I will defend that one to the grave, as well as The Sixth Sense. And as Forrest Gump Jr., he's kind of there. He's curious, but he's a little naive. He has this glimmer of hope in his eyes in all of his early roles, and I haven't seen him in a lot of newer roles, so I can't say for sure if he held on to that or not. But in those early roles, he had a glimmer of hope, and that is perfect coming-of-age story. Now let's look at Robert Duvall, because the main subplot involves him and Michael Caine's two characters. Now, they're old men in this movie, and one of the subplots is flashbacks to when they were in the French Foreign Legion fighting in World War I in Africa, as well as all their little adventures in the Middle East involving a rich Sikh. What makes that believable going in as an audience member is knowing that Michael Caine came from Zulu. You know, he has a storied history. He has a storied history in some of those earlier action movies. Robert Duvall is the same way. Robert Duvall's wrinkles and his age is shown through the film, but having those memories of him from earlier movies, and we talked about this with The Shootist with John Wayne, where they showed all his older movies in sequence to kind of build up that character. They didn't need to do that in Secondhand Lions because Michael Caine and Robert Duvall have such a storied past, any older audience that is familiar with them will completely believe that these two were French Foreign Legion heroes, that they might have been bank robbers, that they could have all this money. The attitudes and perceptions of these two characters are perfectly set just based on the roles that Michael Caine and Robert Duvall have played in the past. And that's extremely important for these stories, is that you can kind of go in with the actor and believe it. One of the things I brought up when I talked about True Grit in the video on the 5 best westerns was that Jeff Bridges has a certain attitude and reputation where it wasn't quite believable to me going into the movie that he could be Rooster Cogburn. He pulled it off. It managed to be a really good movie, but his acting roles beforehand had made it so I really questioned whether or not he was going to be able to pull that off. So Robert Duvall and Michael Caine are perfect for Hub and Garth, as they have that storied past as actors and those movies under their belt, where it is believable in the movie while you're watching it that these two men actually did all of the amazing things that the subplot talks about. As well as Walter, played by Haley Joel Osment. Up until that point, every one of his roles was hopeful, naive, glimmer of hope in his eyes. Every single one of them, even in Sixth Sense. It's been a while since I've seen that one. I do clearly remember that he did have some hope, and it was actually a pretty decent story, probably one of the better M. Night Shyamalan movies. So what about the main plot? What about plot and story? The plot is kind of weak. I'll be 100% honest. The main plot is a weaker plot. Walt is dropped off. Here's these stories about his uncle's adventures. They grow to love him. He grows to love them. They purchase a lion. His mom comes back with a creepy boyfriend, which actually it sounds like that is her normal MO. Boyfriend tries to get the money, Walt doesn't. Walt goes back to his uncle's. Very, very simple plot. Kind of a weak plot, but the story and the actors are able to carry that. And the subplot helps a lot with this. That subplot of their adventures in the French Foreign Legion and their adventures through Africa, it has almost an Arabian Nights feel to it, which makes you want more. It makes you want them to continue those stories. I think that they could have taken the subplot and made another movie out of it, just Hub and Garth going around, podunking around Africa, being badasses. I would have loved to watch that movie. So if directors or producers, you guys are listening to this, that is my pitch today. Is that you need to make a Secondhand Lions prequel, because that would be really, really dope. It would be an action movie. It would not be a coming-of-age movie. So we discussed the first two subplots, and the third subplot's actually I'm just going to throw this in there because it is hilarious, is the two uncles love shooting at salesmen with their shotguns. Because I got all these salesmen, and that subplot there with the family, the distant family coming, not just Walt and his mom, but other distant relatives coming up, trying to mooch money, the salesman coming. It's because there's this rumor that Hub and Garth have all this money. The entire story is driven by the fact that these two are possibly wealthy. That's the salesman, that's Walt's mom dropping him off, all the annoying warehouse people. The reason I say it's a coming-of-age movie is because it grasps Walter, going from this weak, small, naive, innocent child filled with hope, and throughout the entire story he grows. He learns these lessons from his uncles that he wouldn't learn otherwise, especially from his irresponsible mom and her horrible, horrible boyfriends. And throughout the entire story you see his character grow. You see him gain more strength. One of the scenes I'm talking about is when Garth finishes telling the story about how they fought with the Sheik and they finally escaped him. Walt wants to know what happened to Jasmine. Jasmine was Hub's wife. She was a main part of why the Sheik didn't like them, because she was a princess, and the Sheik wanted the princess to himself, Princess Jasmine, which is what he names the lion. There is a lion in the movie, by the way. It's not just called Secondhand Lions. There actually is a lion in it, and it's really, really funny. So once he gains the whole story, he wants to know what happened to Jasmine. So Garth tells him he needs to ask Hub himself. So he goes out in the middle of the night when Hub is doing his little night walking, sleepwalking, sword fighting thing. Puts a blanket on him and wakes him up and asks him. you see the fear in his eyes as he's trying to spit it out. And you see that little bit of fear throughout the entire story, where he's not quite sure of his uncles. He's not quite sure, you know, whether the stories are real. He's a bit afraid of them. I mean, they're shooting catfish with a shotgun when he arrives. Things like that. And he finally musters up that courage and asks. And Hub tells him what happened. And then Hub tells him a there's some things that are worth believing in, whether they're true or not. In regards to the stories about Jasmine and the French Foreign Legion that Garth had been telling Walter this entire movie, and all those subplots. And it comes together when he finally learns the truth at the very, very end. And he didn't turn out to be a military man. He didn't turn out to be, you know, a hero like his uncles. He's a cartoonist. After his uncles die, he returns, you know, 20 years after the main stories in like 1983. And he's there at the farm examining everything, you know. Sahara Oil helicopter lands. And it's the Sikh's grandson and his great-grandson. And Walter, old Walter, and the Sikh's grandson learn at the same time that these stories were true. It really happened. It wasn't just fantastical stories, but it was something that actually happened to these men. And actually the conversation, I just rewatched this movie the other night, the conversation between the Sikh's grandson and Walter at the very end still makes my hair stand up and gives me little bits of goosebumps. And that's what makes a great movie. Can I be sucked into it? The plot can be weak as long as the story is strong. How good are the characters? And how good are the actors playing those characters? And can it make me feel real emotion? And Secondhand Lions hits that for me every single step of the way. From his mother abandoning him to the end where he's talking with the Sikh's grandson, I can feel the emotions. I can feel a connection to these characters, and that right there, weak plot or not, is what makes Secondhand Lions probably the best coming-of-age movie I have ever seen, and the best coming-of-age movie I can recommend to anyone. It is still relevant in 2020 as it was when it came out in 2003. So I want to thank you guys again for joining me on this Friday. This was supposed to be Monday's video, but I didn't like the first couple takes, so we finally got a chance to recut it, and here we are now. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you know right when I upload it. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about Secondhand Lions? Have you seen Secondhand Lions? Are you going to go watch it now? Or do you hate Secondhand Lions and you're not a real person? Yeah, I said it. So I will catch you all on the flip side. Bye!